Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Transfer Portal CFB podcast presented by NoContextCFB. I'm your host, Dylan. I am joined by my co-host, Andrew and Liam, and we are joined by a special guest today, the Techspert himself of The Athletic, Sam Kahn Jr. Sam, how you doing, man?
Good. How are you guys?
Doing great. Thank you so much for joining us. We got a big week in Texas, but in college football in general as well. So just to kick it off, thank you so much again for joining us. You are a senior writer at the college football powerhouse known as The Athletic. Can you tell us a little bit about your journey from the University of Houston to The Athletic, where you are now?
Yeah, sure. It's been an eventful one. That's now that you say that, wow, I just realized that I think I've been in this business for 17 years and just got to The Athletic last March. And so took a while to get here. Obviously, The Athletic didn't exist when I first got into this business, but I've enjoyed my time in sports journalism. I graduated from University of Houston. I spent 7 years at the Houston Chronicle, my local hometown paper. Covered high school sports for a large portion of that time, and then covered colleges my last year and a half. Covered University of Houston, which is my alma mater. I covered them my last year at the paper, and then I moved to ESPN in 2012 to cover college football recruiting and a little bit of college football for them. I covered Texas A&M my early time there, covered Johnny Manziel's Heisman Trophy winning season, which was an event in itself, and then moved around at ESPN to our SEC coverage team, Big 12, and did a lot of that, and then went to The Athletic last year, where my focus has been primarily my home state, covering Texas college football and a little bit of recruiting as well. So it's been a great journey, and this job that I have right now has been fantastic, just because I've been covering football in the state for 17 years, and to be able to just focus on this state and not necessarily have to, fly to, Big Ten country or the Pac-12. Like, there's nothing wrong with that, but it's nice to be able to focus on this state, which there's plenty to focus on with 12 FBS teams and soon to be 13.
So, Sam, just a quick question for you. Dylan's about to pull it up here. So, preseason, me and a couple of our other Texas guys, we were joined by Shahan Jayaraja, who's a good friend of ours, and we did a Texas Cheer Talk where we took all the FBS teams in the state of Texas and we ranked them as far as, who's going to be New Year's Six worthy compared to our very special category of Rice Cats. And we kind of just want to know your thoughts on this. What do you see here? Like, what sticks out to you? And what did we absolutely get wrong? And I think you and I see one thing very wrong, and it is nowhere near my fault.
Yeah, so I look at this, and Baylor and Houston as college football playoff contenders and New Year's Six hopefuls. I was on the Baylor train for sure. Like, I didn't know if they were going to get in the playoff, but I certainly had them picked as my Big 12 champion. And they had a rough start, although I will say lately they really have started to get it going, and I'm going to be interested to see how they play down the stretch, because I think they could really muck things up in the Big 12 here late as they start to get it going. But University of Houston, which, like as I mentioned, is my alma mater, wow, that has been a disappointing season for them. And I just witnessed their basketball game with SMU that turned out they lost 77-63, which was a lot of fun to watch. But Houston, to me, anything less than 10 wins for them was a disappointment. And so this has been a massively disappointing season for them. I'm actually surprised you're a little bit lower on A&M than most people were. Obviously, A&M was a top 6 team in the country preseason. Obviously, they're far from it. So that's been the other big disappointment in the state, has been A&M. But you have A&M in bowl bound, and they may not even make a bowl. they're going to have to win their last 3 games, and so I think they may have trouble doing that. The overall, other than that, I think it looks pretty good. You got UTSA as a conference champ, hopeful, which right now they're in really, really good shape. TCU's way outperformed expectations. SMU is probably going to get to a bowl. North Texas is already bowl eligible. Texas is already bowl eligible. So, and Tech and UTEP are going to be interesting to watch. Yeah, UTEP losing that game to Rice last week is going to make it a real tough deal for them to get to a bowl here. And Texas Tech is going to have to win a game somewhere down the stretch here. So, So yeah, I think overall pretty good. It's just those three ones that I think that really threw us off was Baylor, or really U2, U of H, and Texas A&M that really threw us off this year.
I think the Rice, I think they deserve a huge shout out too, because in our Conference USA preview, our guys, they had Rice finishing very last in the Conference USA. They're 5-4 right now, and they're only one win away from being bowl bound. I mean, they have done way above expectation than what they were expected to do.
Yeah, no doubt. No, I went and saw them last week, and they've got a good team. They've got good players. They've got a lot of good receivers. The quarterback, TJ McMahon, has gotten into a groove. And that was a must win for them against UTEP, because I think there has been some pressure building up there that they need to get to a bowl game this year. And they took in some steps this year. The win over Louisiana was really, really big early in the year. But they've also dropped a couple that they probably shouldn't have. They dropped a game to FAU that they should have won. They were ahead 14-0. They lost a game to Charlotte at home, 6 days after Charlotte fired its coach and got really destroyed at home, which is not something you want to see. But to be able to bounce every game that they've lost this year, they've been able to bounce back with a win. And that's a testament to their resilience. And yeah, they've got 3 shots here in the last 3 weeks to get one of those wins to get to a bowl game, which would be the first time, I think, since 2014, I think. Or
yeah, 2014 sounds right. When they were
2014.
I think that was when they were last Conference USA champions that year too.
Yeah, so it would be it would be a huge boost for them to get one of those wins in the last 3 weeks. It's not going to be easy necessarily. I think they got North Texas, UTSA, and Western Kentucky left on the schedule, but I do think they're a good enough team that they should be able to squeak one of those out.
That loss to Charlotte's just never going to make sense. Like, we're like that, you're going to look at that result, in December or whatever, and that is just going to stick out, kind of like that North Texas UNLV result. Those 2 games don't make any sense. I don't know, man. I know we had Baylor and Houston up there as playoff contenders, NY6 hopefuls, whatever. Look, Texas school hasn't made national championship since 2010, 2009 season. It was Texas. We've got to ask you, Sam Stradamus, who is the next Texas school that will be playing for a national championship, and how soon or how far away is that going to be?
So are you saying play in the national championship game or make the playoff?
Just playing it.
In the title game. So I would have, at the start of this year, I would have told you it would be A&M. Obviously, it doesn't look like it's heading that direction right now. Of the teams in the state that I think have the best shot, where I look at it now in November 2022, I think Texas probably has the best shot. I think TCU would have a shot this year, obviously, and I think TCU has a really good shot to make the 14 playoff this year. But I just don't know if they would win a semifinal game. I still would love to see a little bit more consistency from them defensively before I would be willing to say that they're going to make it this year. But when I look at Texas, and they're starting to take some incremental steps finally, and the recruiting that they're doing right now is off the charts. They just turned in that their last class was really, really good. This coming class is going to be really, really good. And they're building up really on the offensive and defensive lines, which is the one spot where if you ask where things have gone wrong for Texas over the last 10, 12 years, that's really one of the big parts of it, is that they haven't really produced NFL talent at those positions as much. Defensive line a little bit more so than offensive line, but they don't think they've had a first round pick on the offensive line since I think 2004, I believe. And so it's been a long time for them, but they're starting. You look at like Kelvin Banks, their left tackle right now. That's a guy that's going to play in the NFL,
no doubt.
You look at some of their, like Byron Murphy on the defensive line, who's a young guy. He looks like a guy who'll probably play in the league in a few years. And they're continuing to stack that talent. So then, and the reason I say Texas also is because if they're going to be in the Big 12 for a couple more years, which it looks like they will be, I look at that 24 season and you've stacked up all this talent. That last year before you get to the SEC, that might be that window for them. So maybe it could be as early as 2024 if they continue. And this weekend will tell us a little bit about that. Like, are they mature enough to go and beat a TCU team that's coming to town and put themselves back in the Big 12 title hunt? If they do that, then I think I'm going to be convinced they could do it a little bit sooner. If not, if we're waiting until they get into the SEC, then gosh, who knows? Because that conference is going to be so difficult, with when it goes to 16 teams and you add them and OU in it. And then at that point, I think you're looking at Is it a TCU or Baylor that may be, because the path is going to be a little bit less treacherous in conference? So could a TCU or Baylor be the team that does that? A&M right now looks like A&M still has the talent, but how much are they going to retain it? Are they going to retain that talent? Are they going to lose a lot of guys to the portal after the season? Or are they going to be able to get a strong 23 class? They've got a decent class right now, but they've got to finish it up a little bit stronger. There's a window here where A&M can still bounce back and put itself in that conversation, but the next 3 to 6 weeks are really going to be telling in that regard.
And who knows? Maybe it's UTSA in 2057.
Hey, as long as Jeff Traylor's at UTSA, I think the Roadrunners have a shot to do just about anything.
Absolutely. Yeah. We've been manning the UTSA meep hype train for the last couple of years while we've been on Twitter. So we definitely love to see the success of UTSA, and we'll talk about the Longhorns a little bit later in the show. But I'm curious, Sam, to start with you. What do you think is the biggest storyline heading into week 11? As we've got the college football playoff rankings out for the second week. Every conference is kind of up for grabs for the most part at this point in the season. So what are you looking for this week?
I think it's just do the top teams take care of business, because we're now getting into that. We're in the last month of the season. We're getting the last few weeks, and this is where things get tense, especially for teams that are undefeated. They're in the race, and it's just human nature. You got 18 to 22-year-old, young men, and it's hard to go unbeaten. And we're getting toward the end of the season where guys are banged up and stuff. So I'm curious: does Michigan, Georgia, Tennessee, do they all take care of business? Oregon's got a really, really big game against Washington this weekend. Of course, we mentioned TCU and Texas. That's a game with huge implications, not just in the Big 12, but of course in the playoff as it relates to TCU. Do those teams take care of business going into the week? And then on a different scale, I look at the G5 level. I look at the UCF Tulane game as one that fascinates me, because obviously there's, not just conference stakes there, but New Year's Six implications in that one as well. So I'm just really curious to see, because this is one of those weeks where you kind of look at the schedule and say, yeah, Tennessee, Michigan, Georgia, they probably should all take care of business, but that's not how college football goes. There's always something. It's the weeks when you don't think anything's going to happen that gets chaotic. And so that's what I'm kind of interested to see how that plays out this weekend.
So for me, it's kind of a little bit what you're saying about what the biggest headline for me is. For me is are we approaching the end of the AAC's dominance in terms of getting those New Year's Six bids? Because you may look at Tulane or UCF and you may say to yourself, okay, it's obviously got to be one or the other. But right now, the way I view it is these two teams got to play each other, and maybe Tulane's going to be the heavy favorite. But you look at UCF, I think that loss to East Carolina earlier is really going to hurt them a lot. But East Carolina, they got to go to Navy. They got to play Navy at home, which honestly isn't that big. And then they got to go at UCF. If UCF loses to Tulane this year, does this completely knock them out of the New Year's Six contention? If Tulane wins, May sounds good, but Tulane then will have to play SMU at home, an SMU team that put up 77 points this past weekend. And then they have to go on the road to Cincinnati. Now, we don't view Cincinnati now the same way that we did last year, but that's still not an easy place to play, especially for Tulane. And we literally just got the Grayson McCall news earlier today that he's going to be out for 3 to 6 weeks. Does this knock Coastal out of the conversation? And also got to look at the Conference USA, in my honest opinion. I think UTSA, I think they've been disrespected over the last couple weeks over not being ranked. I think ever since they lost to Texas, they deserve every bit of credit the way that they've handled their business and Conference USA. I think they're still the best team in that division. If you look at UTSA and how they've handled business the whole season since that loss to Texas, I think they've been probably more consistent than any other team in the group of five other than Tulane.
Yeah, I like UTSA to still go out and be the group of five rep in the NY6 bid. Like, I still see that happening. UTSA's issue is just straight up been playing with their food too much. They're always in a dogfight late in the fourth quarter. Stop. We know that they're too good of a team to do that. Go out there, handle your business in dominant fashion. Also, prayers up for DeCorian Clark. Gruesome injury. Hope he's good. Can't wait to see him back when he is. And then, you know, like Coastal, man, like, we got to see what Bryce Carpenter can do now that he's got the QB1 job out of nowhere. And this is a team that has Southern Miss this week. They have James Madison and UVA also. Like, they have three very important games for a team that could have been that NY6 got to that NY6 bowl. Like they're sitting pretty at 8-1. McCall goes down. Who knows what's going to happen? Carpenter's a tough dude and everything. It's going to be fun to see. For my storylines, I did kind of cheat, and I kind of used to, like Sam said, the unexpected happens in college football, especially when you're not expecting it. That line in the LSU Arkansas game being LSU -3 just raises your eyebrows, and it is Vegas is screaming at everyone to go and take LSU. How is LSU going to respond off the emotional high of beating Alabama in the fashion that they did? How's Arkansas going to return from embarrassment after getting throttled by Liberty? Really interested to see that one. And I hate to be the dweeb that I am and go and say this, but what on earth do some teams need to do to get some respect from the committee? What on earth do, like seriously, Alabama and Clemson, 9-10. Okay, whatever. Are we seriously thinking that Alabama and Clemson should be top 10 teams right now after they lost in the ways that they have? Like, Alabama has not looked like the dominant team that they have in years past. It's okay to admit that. But I know straight up, take away the Alabama logos, let's put Ole Miss logos on everything. Will Anderson's still on the team, Saban's still coaching, Bryce Young's still a quarterback, schedule's the same, results are the same, etc. It's just Ole Miss. Where's Ole Miss ranked? 14, 15, somewhere around there. It ain't 9. It's not that Alabama bias that they're getting. Let's go and do the same thing with Clemson. Make it all Wake Forest. Where are they ranked? We all know they ain't number 10, and that's just the truth. How about, I hate to do this too and bring up UCLA SC. These are teams that I rank tied for 8th, but I'm going to do it. There's no reason that USC should be ranked 8 when UCLA is 12. That difference doesn't make any sense. Both teams played Utah. UCLA throttled Utah in dominant fashion. SC, yes, emotional game. It was tough, went down to the wire. They didn't win that game. What's the committee tell us? SC's ranked number 8. Because Caleb Williams has thrown for 28 touchdown passes. What are we doing? What are we doing? Can we figure this stuff out? It's embarrassing. And go and ask Liberty and Coastal how it feels to not be ranked. That doesn't make sense either. Why is Kentucky ranked after squeaking by Missouri because of a roughing the punter call? What are we can we rank the best teams? Can we rank teams that are most deserving of it? And it's sick and tired. I'm sick and tired of it. I'm sorry.
What's Alabama's best win?
Alabama's best win is what? The Texas one where they won by 1 point. But don't worry, man, because the committee will tell you, they'll be sure to tell you Mississippi State and Arkansas are great quality wins.
5-4 Arkansas. That is interesting. So, yeah,
Arkansas team should have lost to Missouri State, by the way.
Yeah, I'm with you on the Alabama thing because they haven't just looked great. The 1 point win over Texas, who was without a starting quarterback for 3 quarters, and then A&M took them down to the last play. So yeah, I'm with you on that. But we know how it goes with those rankings.
Mm-hmm. Bill O'Brien has done tremendous things to destroy that offensive talent, and it's great to see.
The crazy thing about you literally took the whole Alabama Clemson thing from me. We didn't even coordinate that. So I guess I'll just keep going with that. It's been over 7 years since Alabama and Clemson were both outside of the top 5 at the same time. That was 2015. They both went to the national championship game that year. That's not going to happen this year. I would hope, because everybody's been talking about the college football playoff committee being biased. You just said it. If Alabama had the Ole Miss logo, if Clemson had the Wake logo, would they still be ranked anywhere near where they are now? I think no as well. But I'm not saying people are wrong to do so about writing off Alabama and Clemson at this point. It's new territory at this point. But at least one of these two teams has been in every playoff. The last time I think either one of them were left out of the BCS or the playoff was 2010. I still have this weird feeling in the back of my head that the playoff committee is going to give Alabama or Clemson a chance at the end of the season, no matter what they do. I don't think they should. I don't think Clemson has even a shot at sniffing the playoff after that loss to Notre Dame.
It's North Carolina that they lost. They got downright embarrassed.
That score does not tell the story of that game whatsoever. They absolutely got dominated. If North Carolina can't beat Wake Forest or they can't finish out the rest of the season unbeaten, and Clemson, whoever they beat in the ACC title game does not have a very good resume, they shouldn't be considered. I think even if North Carolina wins out and dominates, I don't think Clemson should get in. Alabama, we already talked about that. Their win against Texas is the best one. I guess a 24-point win against Mississippi State is a good win. If Mississippi State beats Georgia, then I feel like the playoff is going to run away with the Mississippi State's a high quality win. But it's just crazy to me that Alabama and Clemson are outside of the top 5. They're 9-10, where I don't think they should be. But I feel like there's still this haze of confusion around what the committee, how they're going to view Clemson and Alabama at the end of the season, especially if Alabama gets to the SEC championship. They beat Ole Miss, take care of business this week, and then they potentially beat a Tennessee, Georgia. Could the first 2-loss team get in? That's really a crazy thing. But speaking of the college football playoff committee, they've released their second rankings this week. Sam, I'm curious, what is your first reaction to what they did yesterday?
I was genuinely surprised to see Tennessee behind TCU, and not necessarily because I think the Vols should be ahead of TCU, but after seeing TCU behind a 1-loss Alabama in the first batch of rankings, I 100% expected TCU to be behind a 1-loss Tennessee, since Tennessee's only loss was to Georgia. But so seeing TCU at number 4 was a pleasant surprise. And then the other top line reaction I had was LSU's got a path, and you just hit on it. The 2-loss SEC champ. If LSU runs the table the rest of the way, gets in the SEC championship, and happens to win the SEC title, it's sitting there at 7 right now. I think it'd be hard for LSU, based on what we know about the committee and how these rankings typically go. I think it'd be hard for LSU not to get in, even as a 2-loss team. So I think the stage is set, whether it's Alabama, whether it's LSU, whether it's Ole Miss. If one of those 2-loss teams that ends up having 2 losses ends up winning the SEC, I think one of those gets in. But LSU's has the clearest path that a 2-loss team, or the best path for a 2-loss team, maybe since that Auburn team a few years back that just missed it at the end there.
Mine is kind of what he was already saying, was LSU, and kind of just like, is it possible to get 2 SEC teams and 2 Big Ten teams in this? Because if you come down to the debate of who do I think is the best and all that, Ohio State and Michigan, they're still undefeated right now. And I think it could very well be a situation of Ohio State beats Michigan at Ohio Stadium at the end of the year. Michigan only has the 1 loss. And let's say that they lose just barely. I mean, they've dominated. They've swept the floor with almost every other opponent that they've had this year. Ohio State goes to Big Ten title game, and Big Ten West, with how bad it is, trust me, I'm a fan of a Big Ten West team. That is the worst division I think college football has seen since in the playoff era, especially among Power 5 conferences. So if Michigan loses to Ohio State, doesn't get the opportunity to the Big Ten title game, have they not proven that they were already among one of the best teams in the country? And also we got to look at Oregon too. Oregon still has to play Utah, and Dylan, I promise you, I'm not trying to bring you PTSD from last year, but you still got Utah, you still got Washington, and you still got to go to Oregon State at Corvallis at the end of the year, which I think Oregon State, it seems like they're in 1 week, they're out the next week, and then they're in the week after in our rankings. I know that they've got a very high-powered offense. I'd like to see where Oregon State, how do they compete against Oregon? There's still way too much, haziness right now. I think if LSU was to make it to was able to make it to the SEC title game, beat Georgia, because they're not losing the last 3 games. I don't know how you can't put them in, if especially if you label them as the SEC Crown, the first ever 2-loss team to ever make the playoff.
I mean, how much time do you have for me to talk about this? This stuff is unreal, dude. It's like the more and more that Buke Oregon talks, the more secondhand embarrassment I get being a college football fan that actually watches every game. The reasonings that he and the committee give for where teams are ranked are just so extremely, it's like impossible to comprehend that this is how you're valuing teams. Everything he said about TCU last week, he just didn't mention and say this week. He completely turned it around and turned those negatives into positives. You look at I don't know, man. I hate to bring it up because it's UCLA, but those who know me know it doesn't matter what school it is. I'll fight for them for their reasoning of why they need to be ranked higher. It just happens to be UCLA in this moment. Buke Oregon has an open agenda against UCLA, and that's just well known. NC State AD. we know the Holiday Bowl last year. These two programs were supposed to play each other. COVID outbreak on UCLA's and the NC State side was up in arms, extremely mad, extremely angry at UCLA because that game was not able to be played. Boo still hates UCLA for it. I think that's well evident. There's a lot of other things. Look at, why is Kentucky ranked? Was it the 8-point win against Northern Illinois? Was it a 3-point win against Missouri? There's just no good quality wins. Anytime they actually play an opponent of, tough quality and stuff, they get blown to shreds. Look what happened against Tennessee. The Ole Miss game's an outlier, whatever. Ole Miss is just a team that's going to play closer games like that. I don't know. There's just so much wrong with the credit, though. Tulane, Texas, Kansas State was ranked in the correct order. Did not see them doing that. Applaud them for it. I don't know, though, man. There's just, I was going to say something else and I forgot because I was going on other rants, but maybe I'll think of it. I don't know. I just, I remembered. That's good memory for me. That doesn't happen much. SVP brought up a really good point last night on his show that I've kind of thought of since I was like 11 or 12. And he just goes and straight up says, I know it's sacrilegious. Ohio State and Michigan, though, should they even be playing the final week of the regular season? They might as well as play in October, because then the loss isn't going to be held against them. They're not going to lose at the worst time possible. You might as well play earlier. The committee's not going to remember that. Like, because you guys know, when you lose a game late in the season, that basically kills things. It nukes your reputation, and that shouldn't be the case, but it is. And so that was just another thing to bring up. I'm not going to go too in depth on that because time is of the essence, and we got more football to talk about.
Well, thank you, Liam. I appreciate your.
I could have got very more hours.
Yeah, I'm sure. I know you can. You already kind of covered the USC thing. Their best win is against Oregon State by 3, I would say. And they just haven't really dominated the Pac-12 at all. Like, I know that they're winning games, and Lincoln Riley and Caleb Williams and all that talent that they've brought in, they deserve credit for even being in this conversation right now. But I mean, you talked about it. UCLA has 2 wins over top 15 teams. They beat a Utah team that beat USC. They've dominated a couple times against, the bottom feeders like USC hasn't really been able to do. I don't really see I wouldn't put UCLA too far ahead of USC or vice versa, but the fact that USC is 4 spots above UCLA makes no sense to me. USC, in my opinion, if they beat if they beat Oregon in like a Pac-12 championship, or if they beat UCLA handedly, then I think there is a shot for them to get into the playoff. I believe it was Greg McElroy last night that was talking about USC has the best path to get into the playoff. I don't know if I'd say that, just because of what they've done so far. And if they only squeak by a UCLA team, or if UCLA trips up, later down the road, then I don't think USC has very good wins. I don't know if Oregon, will handle their business, because Oregon State, I still feel like that's a trap game, to be honest. Like, Corvallis is a tough place for Oregon to win. They always play them tough for the most part. I know there are a couple outliers, but there's just so many outside factors where the Pac-12 could completely fall apart, and then nobody has a case to get into the playoff. It's kind of usually what happens every year. So I expect some craziness to happen the last couple of weeks of the season. And then the Pac-12 championship doesn't really have as many college football playoff implications as we might think. And then I agree, Illinois shouldn't be ranked. I don't think Kentucky should be ranked. I was back and forth on whether Kansas State and Florida State should, but I respect the Florida State one. But that's a thing where I think they're holding an early season win too high, as you're talking about. They hold a late season loss too high. The Florida State win over LSU was a good win, but that was so long ago. Brian Kelly's first game, neutral site. I don't know how much you can hold that right now. So college football playoff committee's got to get it figured out, I think, with USC and UCLA specifically. I think that's the biggest issue.
And it's all going to get worked out and stuff, but arguing about is really fun, is it not?
Yeah, they got to give us something to argue about. Like, otherwise we wouldn't be in business. That's the whole fun of college football. And speaking of the business of it and the fun of it, let's get spicy. Let's kick up some hot takes, bold predictions for Week 11. Sam, let's start with you. What do you got?
I think one of the top 6 teams will lose this weekend. Obviously, there's 2 prime candidates for that, TCU or Oregon, because they're both playing ranked teams. But even if it's not one of them, I think kind of alluding to what I had said earlier about chaos, somebody in that top 6 is going to lose, I think, this weekend and obviously make for a really compelling, look into next week and what the rankings turn out to be. If I had to pick one, I hate to say it, but I think TCU, because they're having to go on the road, and Texas has shown, or at least it definitely did show against Alabama, when they have that home game and the packed stadium and the atmosphere and all that stuff with College Game Day, they certainly seem to play up for it. But even if it's not them, if TCU wins, I think one of those top 6 teams will drop this week.
Ohio State's Indiana.
I mean, you can't rule it out. I mean, hey, how many playoff teams have we seen in the past lose a game that you just absolutely didn't see coming?
How many teams have you seen lose as a 41-point favorite?
Yeah, that would actually be pretty monumental.
So my bold prediction, it's really not going to be as bold as it may sound, but honestly, I'm going to go on and just say I think Iowa will fail to score double-digit points this week against Wisconsin. That really shouldn't sound like a bold take, but honestly, this Iowa offense, I mean, Spencer Petras has 3 touchdown passes in his last 2 games. That honestly should not sound real.
Tanner Mordecai had that in the first quarter last week for SMU.
Yeah, thanks for reminding me. But honestly, they go up against Wisconsin defense that I think right now is really they've really been stepping up their game big time since Jim Leonard's been taking over the coach. They just held Maryland to only 10 points. Granted, I know Talia was not healthy, but that was a Maryland offense that failed to score fewer than 27 points all year, and then they've only scored 10. I think Wisconsin, this is the type of game where I feel like they really bode well right now. I still don't think Iowa's as good as what their offense has been over the last 2 weeks. I am confident that Wisconsin's front 7 will hold Spencer Petras to honestly not even a touchdown. I think he's going to throw 3 picks in this game. I really like the way that Wisconsin's going right now, especially with the way that Jim Leonard's been holding up. I mean, the players are behind him. I mean, for those that watched that post game, the Wisconsin locker room was playing Jimmy Cooks as he was going to the locker room. So I think he's got the program in a really good high morale situation. I think Wisconsin's going to honestly hold Iowa to either 6 points or a touchdown, 1 to 2.
Iowa's offense to suck is outlandish, man. That is
the ultra rare comment.
It was good last 2 weeks. It's good. It's bold compared to the last 2 weeks, and they're at home. I mean, come on, give me some credit.
Defense is going to score 28. That's crazy. I'm kidding, but okay. I'll kind of piggyback off what Sam said. I'll just go and say it. Number 7 loses. LSU is going to lose. You know how much I've hated that Arkansas team all season long. I seriously think that they should have like 2 or 3 wins. College football don't make sense. Arkansas is going to win that game. That's just how the sport works. Then Fordham. Yo, committee, what's up? We're hyping up Caleb Williams and his 28 touchdown passes. What are you going to do after Tim DeMorat throws for 7 this week and he's got 50 on the season? I like Tim DeMorat to throw for 7 touchdowns, get to that clean number of 50 with the game in hand. And then I like him to throw for 400 plus passing yards.
Yeah, man. Tim DeMorat and Lindsey Scott Jr. have just been tearing up the FCS and they deserve their hype. Lindsey Scott was on our YouTube not too long ago, so make sure to go check that out. I feel like everybody's kind of got the same vibe here of upsets. Like we all feel like something crazy is going to happen this weekend, and I definitely think there's something going to happen in the SEC specifically. I think it's either going to be LSU to Arkansas, or bear with me, I have this stupid feeling that Georgia's going to lose to Mississippi State. I have no idea why. I've been wrong about my upsets recently, so I'm probably way off. Realistically, I think one will be an upset, and whichever one I don't pick is probably going to blow out the other team. But like LSU losing to Arkansas, I just have a feeling about that one. Like you said, Vegas knows something that we don't. But look out for Mississippi State, man. I mean, the cowbells are going to be crazier than ever. Mississippi State has this weird trend where they win against ranked teams when they're an unranked team. I think they have 6 in the last 3 years and 10 since the start of the 2016 season. I know it's Georgia. I know they just beat Tennessee, but Starkville, man, it's going to be crazy. I just have a weird feeling that it's going to be a letdown game for Georgia. And then LSU, if LSU does beat Arkansas and then they go into the SEC title game, man, I mean, that could be really weird if Georgia loses to Mississippi State and an Alabama or an LSU or an Ole Miss beats a one-loss Georgia team and gives them a second loss. Like, what is the SEC in the playoff going to look like? Does Tennessee get in without even going to the SEC title game? Like, man, that is just a crazy thing to think about.
That scenario's crazy.
That's all I'm about. I'm all about the spice. As soon as we write down a hot take, I'm like, all right, I'm going nuts. I'm going stupid. If I'm right, then I'm all over. What is it? What was that Twitter page that got me for the Tennessee Alabama thing? They already
Raising
knew
Cold
or
takes.
whatever. Or that one. We've also been on that one.
Well, you should just like, you're down at the 2-yard line here. You might as well just add Ole Miss beats Alabama.
Yeah, that's a crazy upset.
Trifecta.
Yeah, Alabama's number 9, Ole Miss is 11. That's an upset by the playoffs standards, I suppose.
12-point
But
dog.
we'll get to that one in a little bit. That one's on the docket as well. But let's go into player focus. Let's narrow it down a little bit as to 2 players that we're looking at to either have a really good game or someone that you're expecting to step up. 1 Power 5 and 1 Group of 5 or FCS. Sam, let's start with you.
Yeah, I'm going to use a guy that I've wanted to start to raise awareness of nationally a little bit more is Kendre Miller at TCU. A lot of attention around TCU's run this year has been on Max Duggan, and rightfully so. The guy's having a career year. He's in the Heisman Trophy race, and he's been a great story for TCU. But Kendre Miller's really been the guy that's made them go because when they are either struggling offensively or they need to move the chains, Kendre Miller's been the consistent guy for them in that regard. He's got 600-yard games in the last 7 weeks. He was, when TCU lost Zach Evans to the transfer portal last year, a lot of people wondered, well, you lost, and Zach's one of the most talented backs I've ever seen. What would happen? But Kendre played a lot last year when Zach was either out, injured, whatever, and got some valuable carries and really has blossomed to a great player as really the main back for them. And they've got some others as well, but Kendre's really been, I think, one of the more underrated backs in the country. And then in the Group of 5, you look at that big game with UCF and Tulane. I think Michael Pratt nationally, at least amongst my brethren, probably been a little bit underrated or overlooked. He's got, he's been a really good dual threat for them. Really good. I think 14-4 touchdown interception ratio. So Pratt's been a guy who's, been critical to Tulane's success this year. And obviously he's going to play a big role in Tulane's game against UCF this week.
So for me, I'm going to go with Dylan somewhat talked about, Liam somewhat talked about the Alabama Ole Miss game. I'm going to go with Ole Miss running back Kinshawn Judkins. He goes up against essentially his hometown team, him being from Alabama. He's a 3-star guy, never got the offer from Alabama, but the way the season that he's having, he's had 98 plus yards in all but 2 games this year. He got 205 last week against Texas A&M. And this is still an Alabama team that I think is top 2 in SEC defense, especially in rushing yards. And this game, with it being, being at the Grove at Ole Miss, I'd like to see how is he going to do in front of the home crowd against the 9th ranked team. Is this going to be is his running power going to essentially officially kick Alabama out of any contention, put it all to the tombstone, 6 feet under? Because it's like we always talk about with committee, they're always going to bring some BS up. Now, I think Sam knows that one of the biggest sins that you can do on the University of Houston campus is compliment something about Rice. I did it one time, and I had my friends hate me for it. But I got to give a shout out to Bradley Rosner for Rice, and this is a big game for Rice. You asked me to say these words preseason, I would not believe you. But right now, it's like what he's saying about McMahon and the way that he's led this Rice offense. It's done wonders. And Bradley Rosner, getting that the last minute touchdown against UTEP last week, I think this is really crucial for Rice. And there's a culture change happening over there. Slowly but surely is happening. The way that he's been able to receive the ball, he's got 100+ yards in 4 of his last 6 games. And the tempo of this Western Kentucky offense, it really hasn't slowed down that much since last year. Look, Bailey Zappi's been tremendous, but Reed's also been very good this year. I think Rice will need to rely on Rosner a lot if they want to outscore that Western Kentucky offense.
Love what Marcus Tuiasosopo is doing, man. Like, I want him to get a head coaching job so badly. Like, let him get the Colorado job. I don't care. You spoke to Judkins. true freshman, dude. He's fourth in all-purpose yards in the SEC. All right, like unbelievable talent. And funny enough that both Andrew and Sam go with a running back that played with Zach Evans. Kendrick Miller, him and Dwayne McBride are so clearly the two most underrated backs in the country. Like Miller, man, because Bijan's so good, but Miller is unreal too and just never gets the love, man. I rank Miller as my number 2 running back in the upcoming draft. Like I think he's a flat out stud. I'll go and talk about another running back, Mr. Etienne of Florida. Trevor is an incredible player as well. His shiftiness and just sudden movement is just so dang good. He might end up, I don't know. I'm not going to say he's going to end up being better than Travis. That's a little too early to say that. But he and Travis are both going to be playing in the NFL at the same time at some point, and that's pretty sick. Etienne's getting a lot more volume as these weeks go on, getting a lot of work as a true freshman at Florida. Love to see it. He's going to be a really good ball player, and it's time to start realizing that Trevor Etienne is that dude right now. Let's go on to Old Dominion, where Ollie Jennings had a path to go and contend for that Biletnikoff, but the one issue with him all year, he doesn't get the volume. He doesn't get the number of targets that a true WR1 at a GO5 deserves. Last 2 games, he's only had a total of 7 catches for like 54 yards. What are we doing, ODU? Let's get Ollie the ball. You're playing James Madison this week, huge game. Chuck that thing, throw the Ollie over and over again. This is a game where Ollie Jennings needs 150 plus 200 receiving yards. Like this is that kind of game for Ollie Jennings. Let him make a statement. He needs 10 catches. Like just throw him the ball. He's too good to go out there and put up 7 for 54 in the last 2 games. What are we doing?
I think Ollie a couple weeks ago it was number 1 in Division I in receiving yards, and I think this week he wasn't even in the top 5. So
yeah, he was doing that in like 45 catches.
Yeah, it's insane. His yards per catch has always been one of the best in the country. He's phenomenal. I'm really disappointed in Old Dominion this year, but that's another topic for another day. I'm going with Christian Gonzalez, cornerback for Oregon. He is one of the most talented corners in the country. And I think that even when he was at Colorado, he was just a lockdown guy that nobody was talking about. I remember him making big play after big play in the Alamo Bowl against Texas, I believe, a couple of years ago as a freshman. And then he transferred to Oregon. I predicted he was going to be their most important transfer coming into the season. Little did I know Bo Nix would be leading the FBS in total touchdowns at this point in the year. But Gonzalez is an absolute stud in man-to-man coverage, but he's going to have a test unlike any other against this Washington passing attack. Guys like Rome Odunze and Jalen McMillan, Jalen Polk, these guys are really fast, really talented. They can get open, they've got speed, and they can catch and make guys miss in the open field. I'm really looking for him to be kind of the step-up guy for the Ducks in the secondary because they've got some young corners out there that kind of scare me. Like Triquez Bridges is a guy that's gone back and forth between corner and safety. He's been targeted early in the year. Dante Manning's a guy who's still really young and can get targeted and picked on sometimes. So Gonzalez is going to have to be that guy to step up in the secondary. And then I'm going with an FCS guy for my pick. I didn't think I'd be the only one, but I'm going to be the lone FCS rep this time. I'm going with Richmond quarterback Reese Udinsky. Offenses, man, they don't throw on Delaware at all. Like nobody's had success doing so. I wouldn't recommend it. They haven't allowed more than 179 passing yards all year. They've picked off 7 passes. They're just one of the best defenses total in the country in the FCS. If Richmond is going to win this game, they're going to have to find a way to throw the ball on one of the stingiest defenses in the FCS. It's going to be a really tough battle. It's going to be a very entertaining game in the early slate in the FCS. Well, we're going to go to the early slate in the FBS to start our game picks, our little college game day action here. And now, Sam, just to preview here, nobody in the last 2 years that we've done this with has ever reached 8 wins out of the 10 games that we picked. We've had a couple guys go 7-3, but nobody's ever reached that 8-win threshold. So we're going to kick it off here with East Carolina and Cincinnati.
I'll take Cincinnati. Getting that game nippered at night at home, I think gives them a little bit of a boost there. So give me the Bearcats.
Stupid mute. I'm going to go with Cincinnati also. It's like he says, a night game at Cincy. I know East Carolina has got a lot of confidence after their win over BYU, but I still like Cincinnati a lot.
There's a part of me that just loves this East Carolina team and does not like this Cincy team. I don't care where the game is, anytime, anywhere, any place. Give me ECU and start looking at Kean Mitchell as a potential transfer up at running back going into next season. I think TCU would be a good spot. I think Oregon would be a good spot. I think UCLA would be good spots. Just scheme-wise, I think those all really fit Mitchell well, and he's a future NFL back.
Kind of care where this game is because East Carolina hasn't beaten Cincy on the road in 21 years. Like, it seems like every time that they play Cincinnati on the road, they get absolutely smacked. I think they've allowed, I think it was an average of like 47 points a game in the last 5 times they've played. They've lost 5 in a row there. I love this Pirates team as well. I think they have as good a chance as any team in recent memory to beat Cincinnati on the road. But I think this Bearcats defense is going to do wonders and really prove what it's about and prove that it can lock down an elite defense like East Carolina. So I'm going to go with Cincy at home as well. I can't believe we're picking this game.
Yeah, why are we picking this game?
Liberty versus UConn, man. UConn, the hype is real. They're 1 win away from bowl eligibility. Liberty is a borderline top 25 team. There's hype here. I think there's reason for this, but I'm not sure exactly where it is.
Yeah, it would be cool to see UConn win because, like you said, they've been such a terrific story, and getting a bowl eligibility with this win would be cool for them. But Hugh Freeze is trying to play for a new job, man. He's trying to get one of those. He's trying to get that Auburn job, and I mean they just came off that win over Arkansas. So give me Liberty.
The funny thing about UConn here is they haven't conceded. They've conceded more than 14 points only once since the start of October. I think this UConn defense needs to be respected a little bit, but I think there's too much talent on Liberty. I really like Jonathan Bennett and the way that he leads that offense, so I'm going to go Liberty.
We should be picking Mercer Furman instead of this. The people watching are all upset about it. Give me Liberty, but let me throw this scenario out here because it's fun bowl stuff. Yes, UConn loses this, but they're still going to be bowl eligible because they beat Army, but Army is going to beat Troy this week, and then Army is going to beat UMass and Navy, and they're also going to be bowl eligible. So there, Army and UConn will both be bowl eligible. Silence the haters with that.
Should have been your hot take from a couple of minutes ago. That was better than what you had before.
No. What?
I mean, as much as I've loved what UConn has done this season under Jim Mora, he came out of nowhere he was working with Sports Illustrated, I think, as the as an analyst there, and now he's the head coach. I do think this Liberty team is legit. I've had them ranked the last couple of weeks when nobody else has, it feels like. Their defense will make life difficult for a Huskies offense that hasn't necessarily been explosive or game-changing. Like you've said, they've won with their defense. The Flames, they get after in the secondary. They've intercepted 13 passes in 9 games. They got a lot of talent. If Liberty jumps out in front early, it could be a long, long day for UConn. But I do think UConn will end up being bowl eligible eventually, but I like Liberty in this one. We are going with an FCS game. We've got 2 actually on the docket, so don't complain too much, Lamb. Princeton versus Yale, Ivy League stuff.
Nerds.
Yeah, I got no idea because I have not watched any Ivy League football this year. But and Princeton undefeated going on the road. That's going to be an interesting one. But go ahead and give me the Tigers to stay unbeaten.
I go with Princeton too. They're undefeated. It feels like that they've wiped the floor with every opponent except for Dartmouth of all teams in the FCS. Yale, they have arguably the worst stadium in Division I football too. So I'll go with Princeton.
Can I give another shout? Yeah. What?
Even over Rice?
Let's
not go into it.
Yeah.
we got time.
Well, it's not like SVP needs the shout out, but just I thought it was very funny that on his show he said only in an Ivy League school do you see leaves scattered all over the field, all over the playing field. There's just leaves everywhere. I like Princeton in this game. This elite defense only gives up 11 per game. It's pretty wild regardless of where you play at, even though these guys are studying all day instead of practicing. But Andre Iosofis and Dylan Classy, a receiver in Princeton, have been making exceptional catches all year long. I like Princeton. I'm not smart enough to go there, though. That's okay.
I've been really high on this Princeton team this year. Incredibly tough defense that forces turnovers, doesn't give up anything in the red zone. They don't even let teams go to the red zone. I think the only two teams that have allowed fewer than 20 red zone possessions are Princeton and Jackson State in the FCS. I like the Tigers defense to be big in this one. I like Princeton in a blowout. I like the ZO team, but I think Princeton is that much better. Now that I say blowout, Yale's going to win, because that's every time I say a team's going to win in a blowout, that doesn't happen. So we'll see how it goes. But Richmond versus Delaware, this should be a really interesting one that I talked about a little bit earlier.
Yeah, you mentioned Delaware's pass defense, which now has me a little bit concerned. But and also this is a game with two great mascots. You get the Blue Hens and the Spiders. So Richmond's won 4 in a row. So give me the Spiders to keep it going.
I think I'm going to go with Delaware just for the sake that you brought up that they haven't allowed more than 179 passing yards per game. I don't think that bodes well for any quarterback. So I'll take Joe Flacco University.
Back in the day, man, Delaware beat Navy this season. Richmond put up a decent fight against that terrible UVA team. I'm taking Delaware here, though, and it's not really because of the secondary, although I do think it is dang good. It's more so because Richmond beat up on this Blue Hens team so bad last year and owns 2 straight wins in this series. I like Delaware here. Look at Nolan Henderson at quarterback. He's a dog. We saw what he did against Navy. His movement in the pocket is masterful.
Yeah, give me Delaware at home. I mean, the passing defense is going to be tested more than it ever has, but I think they'll get the job done, and Delaware will win handedly. Let's jump into FBS. I know all the SEC fans are like, hey, let's talk about the SEC. Where's that at? Like, you haven't talked about it enough. Alabama versus Ole Miss.
This is a tough one because part of me cannot imagine a 3-loss Alabama team, because when's the last time that happened? I feel like it's been a long time. But I mean, this Ole Miss team's got a lot of firepower. Kiffin's he's gonna be fired up for this one, going up against his old head coach. And that Ole Miss offense, you guys mentioned Quinshon Judkins earlier. They got Zach Evans, and Jackson Dart has been solid. I think Ole Miss is going to win this one, so I'm going to take the Rebels.
Rat poison.
I'm going to take Ole Miss, only because, let's just be honest here. If you pick Ole Miss to win this game, you essentially got nothing to lose. Because if they lose to Alabama, it's like, oh, great, they played Alabama. And the way I view it is, if you pick Bama and they lose, then you look like the biggest idiot in the world. That's just how these things work. But I think that I like this game being at the Grove. I do know that Ole Miss is one of the highest. They're one of the best rushing offenses in the country right now. I just think Bama's just got to be like broken mentally, and that just sounds insane to say about a Saban team, but there's really no reason to trust a Bama team. So I'll go with Ole Miss.
Why are we even picking this game, Dylan? Alabama's ranked number 9. Might as well be unranked. They're on their way to probably a Capital One Bowl, like way back in the day. Boring. Angry Nick Saban. Enough. I have to take Saban. He's angry. Alabama. Yeah.
It's really funny that you mentioned Capital One Bowl, because Sam, you were asking about the last time Alabama had 3 losses was 2010, and they went to the Capital One Bowl.
And
what are the odds of that?
And they beat Michigan State. I remember that because Michigan State was 11-1, and there was a 3-way tie for the Big Ten that year.
49-7. That game was never close. But everybody's jumping on the Ole Miss bandwagon. The last time Ole Miss was ranked 11th and hosting Alabama, they beat them at home. I think Alabama was ranked 3rd. That was 2014. So give me Ole Miss. I can't believe everybody's picking Ole Miss. This is nuts,
I picked Bama.
Oh, you picked Bama. That's right.
Yes, you three are doing the rat poison. Kiffin's going to be so upset with all of you.
I was too busy looking at the 2011 Capital One Bowl to hear what you were saying. I apologize.
Ooh, my bad, man. I mean, Alabama's just Capital One Bowl machine when they're not going to the Natty.
Or the Citrus Bowl. They were in the Citrus Bowl a few years ago. That was a weird one. Let's go to the Pac-12 out west. Washington versus Oregon.
Yeah, I'm going to take Oregon on this one. And it's just, I think, like you guys talked about Bo Nix earlier, and Michael Penix Jr. has had a great year too, but Bo's been playing out of his mind, and Dan Lanning getting the crew excited with his how do I say, denial about the Auburn gig. That was pretty forceful. That's about as good a non-denial as you can do as a head coach. So I'm sure everybody's fired up there. So give me the Ducks.
Cristobal didn't do a very good job of doing that with the Miami job last year. So any credit is worthy with Lanning.
It's so funny to say Heisman candidate Bo Nix. Let's get crazy now. Okay. I mean, Michael Penix, he's among the top passers and at the FBS this year. But with this game being at Autzen, I'll take Oregon. I think I trust their defense more at home.
Quack, quack. That was my analysis. Yeah.
All right, thanks, man. It's just crazy that Michael Penix Jr. and Bo Nix, like this quarterback matchup, is actually like looked forward to. Like that's just crazy because like Michael Penix Jr. had a tough go of it at Indiana, had a really good year in 2020. Bo Nix had the one good year in 2019. I can't really put a lot of fault on either of these guys for the inconsistency that they've had with injuries and coaching changes and all that stuff. But they're really showing out in this year, and it's really fun to watch. This should be a really, really explosive game. I like Oregon at home. If this game was in Seattle, I'd be really, really worried for Oregon's playoff chances. But this Oregon team, like I have a hard time picking against them and having fear because the offense has just been lighting everybody up. And you got Noah Sewell out there taking handoffs at the 1 yard line and scoring tutties. Like, how do you defend that?
The fact that you're tied for third in the FBS in scoring, despite the Georgia debacle, says everything. That statement in its own is just remarkable to think about.
Yeah, was that
it? Yeah, my delivery there was pretty bad. But if you want me to add on, can I just say that Oregon, Utah, UCLA, SC next week, and one of those games being at 7:30 Pacific is quite terrible. And you know dang well the committee will not be watching that football. It's sleepy time.
For me, I'm all over, man. I love the 7:30 games. So give me all of that. I'm taking Oregon in this one. If it wasn't clear, I'm going with the Ducks. But I do think it's going to be a close one because this Washington team, they're going to be ready to play. This is, in my opinion, one of the most heated rivalries in college football, especially in the last few years. These teams absolutely hate each other. So it's going to be a fun one. It's going to be jumping in Eugene. It's also going to be jumping in Waco with Kansas State in town.
Yeah, you guys mentioned way earlier in the show about Baylor and how they've kind of come on as of late. I like the Bears. You look at the last 3 weeks, let me list off their rushing yards: 273 against Kansas, 231 against Texas Tech, 281 against Oklahoma. Jeff Grimes is in his bag right now. The running game has finally gotten on track. And once that gets going, Baylor's a really hard team to beat. So I'm going to take the Bears.
If this game was in Manhattan, Kansas, I would take Kansas State with ease, but I just feel like this is going to be a really close game, though. I still like Kansas State as a whole. Kansas State's probably going to be the best 4-loss team in the country when it's all said and done, but I'll take Baylor in a very close one.
I didn't know it was going to be jumping out here in Waco, so Dylan, you've swayed me. No, I was always picking Baylor, man. I do really believe that Baylor is going to string together a few wins here at the end of the season. Those midseason struggles really bothered me, but like Sam said, Jeff Grimes is cooking. He's in his bag. Keep on doing this thing, and maybe that Power 5 head coaching gig is coming real quick.
Baylor's last 3 games: K-State, TCU, Texas. They're going to have a say in this Big 12 race at the end of the day, whether they're in it or not.
And ain't nobody talking about him as a player right now. And they're just sitting there all pretty at home, just waiting they're just waiting to create some chaos. The sport is too good.
Yeah, they've been quietly coming back. In the last couple of weeks, they've been playing really good, complete football. They got a good win in Norman last week for only the second time ever. I don't think anybody talked about that at all. It was an impressive win. And you talked about the rushing offense. They've done it with a couple 5'9" guys who are really explosive. Richard Reese, the true freshman, and Squirrel Williams, the 5th-year junior. This is a really fun offense right now. And I think it's going to be electric in Waco. Yeah, I think it's going to be jumping. I said it before. I'll stand behind that. I'm only picking Baylor because I never get Big 12 games right. In my head, I think Kansas State is probably going to win, but I'm going with Baylor because the hype is there. And I like this rushing offense. It's going to be a high-scoring game. Not quite SMU Houston high-scoring, but it'll be high-scoring, probably in the 30s and 40s. But I like Baylor just because I'll never get a Baylor or a Kansas State game right. Either time we pick these teams, I never get it right. So Kansas State, congratulations. Congratulations, Kansas State. You've won this game. North Carolina versus Wake Forest.
Awful.
This is going to be a tough one. And North Carolina's got to go on the road, and you got a freshman quarterback, but that freshman quarterback's damn good. Drake May has been terrific this year, and obviously I think should be getting some Heisman run if he hasn't. I'm going to take the Tar Heels and Mac Brown and the crew.
I'm not saying that this is all Sam Hartman's fault, but he's got 7 picks and he's been sacked 12 times in the last 3 games. Part of me just wants to go with Wake. And this is obviously one of the most poorest defenses that Sam's going to play all year. I'll take Wake, but I don't exactly feel good about it.
It feels like those Sam Hartman numbers all came in one quarter, by the way. If you know, you know. I'm going to take Wake anyway, though. It's more a bet against Mac Brown here, truthfully. I don't think that team's going to be prepared for a game of this magnitude with May potentially making a bid at the Heisman, being able to create some chaos in the ACC. I don't know. I'll take Wake to kind of start to bury UNC, I guess would be the term. I don't know. Maybe that was not the term at all.
I just committed a sin because the last couple weeks before this last one, I changed a pick during the show and I was right both times. Liam knows, he's been on every time with me, and I was wrong last week. I switched from Georgia to Tennessee and I was wrong. So I was like, I don't think I should do that this week, but like, I don't know how to feel about this Wake Forest team, man, because like one week they're putting up 40-something points and they're looking like they can't be stopped. And then the other one, they're turning it over 8,000 times in one quarter. Sam Hartman can't stay on his feet and his receivers can't run routes. Like it's ridiculous how inconsistent Wake Forest looks. And North Carolina has been anything but inconsistent. Like we talked about, Drake May deserves Heisman talk. The dude has been insane all season long. He's been explosive. He's their leading rusher, which is insane. I don't think we talk about that enough. So give me North Carolina on the road. I think they get a good win and keep their ACC title games alive. Let's go to the group of 5 game of the week this week, UCF versus Tulane.
No offense to Texas and TCU, but this is where College Game Day really should have been.
Yep.
Instead, it should have been in New Orleans. Either way, it should be jumping in New Orleans, and I'm going to take. It's always jumping in New Orleans, right? But definitely, it should be jumping for this game, and I'm going to take Michael Pratt and Tulane to win.
I think the AAC is looking at this game and they're absolutely praying for UCF to win because of Tulane's tough schedule rest of the way. I don't think they're going to get their wish. I think Tulane's going to come out a lot better than a lot of people expect them to do so. Yeah, I'll take Pratt and a really good rushing attack of Tulane.
You could truthfully just AAC, ACC, it doesn't matter. Both these conferences have been, they've been mid. I hate to say it. They have. I'm taking UCF here, and I'm going to be the complete moron that is like, I don't know. The only Tulane game I picked right this year is the Kansas State game, as unreal as that sounds. Like, I have been so bad picking Tulane games aside from the upset case. So give me UCF, and pessimistically I'm saying I'm get the L here.
Didn't you pick them to lose to Tulsa last week?
Yes, and I picked them to lose so much since the K-State game. Like, I did not think that they were that good in that game. I thought that was a complete mid-off. I watched every second. K-State was not. Why are we doing this?
I'll say this. I spoke to Dan about this on the recap pod, and it's like the crazy thing when you watch Tulane is when you actually watch them, they're not that impressive. It's not like that they're blowing out their opponents. When I was at the Tulane-Houston game earlier this year and Tulane won it and essentially stabbed every Houstonian in the heart this year, I also could not leave that stadium thinking to myself, yeah, Tulane played better than Houston. Houston just made way too many boneheaded plays that game. And that's my concern with Tulane. I just don't think that they are that great above everyone else. They just play grittier and they just play tougher.
I don't think Andrew could have said any better.
Absolutely. And this UCF defense, you cannot make mistakes against this UCF defense. Like, UCF's defense is very, very tough. The offense is very good too, but like, this defense has been winning them ball games all season long. And I don't think that'll change in New Orleans. I like UCF on the road as well. I think this will be one of the most entertaining games this weekend. It should be a really fun one, but I like UCF to kind of, prove what they're about. Because I think UCF has mostly flown under the radar, got a little bit of hype when they beat Cincinnati, but I don't think enough people are talking about the job that they're doing this season. And now finally, the Power 5 game of the week, where College Game Day is TCU and Texas. The Texpert, what do you got?
This is a really tough one, and I've gone back and forth on it all week long because I think this is a really good matchup overall. You got two offenses that can really put it up. You got two defenses that have some talent, but haven't always been consistent. I think Texas probably been a little bit more consistent defensively than TCU has, and certainly we saw against Alabama how Texas could play. They're fast and physical, and they're sound when they're disciplined. But I'm going to go with TCU because I think this team is just a little bit more mature, because you've got Texas is still a very young team. You still got a freshman quarterback. You still got some young offensive linemen, young receivers. Even some of your big time players on defense are fairly young. Whereas I look at this TCU team that's full of veterans and guys that have been around. And even though this is the first time they've really broken out, this team has always been talented. So I'm going to give the edge to Max Duggan and TCU.
I think Max Duggan, I think he's got one of the best stories in college football this year. The way that he struggled at times last year, he was never really that consistent on the field. I saw a reporter preseason talk about how TCU had a real shot to win this title, and I was kind of like, Max Duggan offense winning the Big 12 championship, and what universe is that happening? It's happening. It felt like when Quentin Johnson had a slow start to the year, but he's been tremendous over the last 4 games. I really like this TCU offense. I think they're going to outclass Texas this weekend.
Getting benched to start the year and losing that QB competition was the best thing to happen to Max Duggan. He has been, again, Frankenstein. Like, this ain't the same dude that has played in years past. It's truly remarkable to see. As college football fans, tune in. We got to watch Bijan Mustardson and Kendre Miller tote the rock. That's some fun stuff right there. Once upon a time, man, I said TCU they're going to win every single game till they got to Texas. And then they're also going to lose to Baylor. If that story holds true, I mean, like, I gotta go with that. 7-point spread too is kind of telling here. A lot of bait there for people to take TCU. I think I'll take Texas, and I'll root for Miller to go big time, because I got him in the fantasy playoffs against Quinn Ewers. I am scared about that, so please make sure Ewers does not do much.
Well, it's really, really funny that you say that about Quinn Ewers, because I wrote down the only note that I have written down about this game is it's going to be the Quinn Ewers legacy game. Like, no! I have a feeling he's going to break out. I'm sorry. I feel like he's been waiting to just erupt. I know he had some games against non-con opponents earlier in the year, and he was rolling against Alabama before that injury. I wasn't sure when they were going to really break out as a team offensively completely. I wasn't expecting it to be last week against Kansas State, because, like I said, I can never anticipate a Kansas State game, so I picked them to lose that game. But I do think that Texas is going to win this game against TCU. They're going to shake up the Big 12, shake up the college football playoff, and really bring some firepower under this Texas program, and give a lot of people some higher expectations going forward with Steve Sarkisian. And like we talked about, this team probably has the best chance out of any Texas school in the FBS to win a national championship, I would say, let alone get to the playoffs. So this Texas team, if they beat TCU and they beat them handedly, which I don't think they will, but if they win convincingly, man, there's going to be some hype around this Texas team. And our guy Adam is just going to be going insane, because he's the biggest Texas fan I know. He's going to be all over Twitter, all over the group chat.
He's going to tweet that he's going to get his girlfriend pregnant. That's what he's going to do.
I was thinking that in my head, but I wasn't going to say it out loud. But I definitely think.
Also, the Quinn Ewers legacy game, can that be like 19 of 52 or whatever against Oklahoma State? Can it be that kind of legacy?
No, man, I'm expecting. I think he's going to torch this TCU defense, and I say that, but like the Big 12. Never right. So maybe he does have a repeat performance against Oklahoma State. But if he doesn't lead the Texas guys to the win, I think it's Bijan and or that defense. Like, I feel like if the passing offense doesn't work, the rush offense can. The defense, I don't know if they can slow down TCU, but I do trust Texas's defense more than I do TCU's. As we talked about.
I will say this though, with the way that TCU has struggled in first halves against West Virginia and Texas Tech. The way that they come back in those second halves may work against those types of teams, but when you are in Austin and when you're against the quality of quarterback that Quinn Ewers is and the talented receivers that Texas has, it's going to be a lot harder to catch back up to Texas than it will be to those two teams.
Yeah, that's
one thing I'll quickly add here that I want to, and I've kind of been saying this a little bit as late, but Bijan Robinson hasn't said it yet, but I think we all probably assume this is his last year and he's probably going to go to the draft next year because he's probably a first-round draft pick. But everybody appreciate Bijan Robinson because he's really one of the best players in the country, and he's been terrific to watch. Like, just watching him, his cut, his burst is just pure ability. Like, we don't get a ton of backs like him. So let's enjoy the last few games that we have of him while he's around, because he's truly one of a kind.
Cherish these moments.
Literally was going to say that. I knew you were going to say that.
I also do want to add something else, just to actually give some analysis. Like TCU, it's the whole play with your food thing. Like they've done it all year. If you do that against this Texas team, you might not be able to get back into that game, because that Texas offense led by Bijan can just straight up torch you and go down the field and answer every score that you like. It's like a tennis game. You don't want your serve to be broken. TCU can't afford that. And then let's look into this. TCU, why they're so good in second halves, it's the adjustments that they make on the fly. Sonny Dykes and Garrett Riley's in-game adjustments are probably the best in the country, and that's why TCU is ever so often able to exploit defenses, create. Why are TCU receivers always 30 yards? Like they're in DB 30 yards with them. The adjustments, what they are scheming up is truly remarkable. They're doing it on the fly in game based on what they see from a defensive scheme that day in that first half. So look out for that. Look out what TCU is able to do in the second half after they adjust. Garrett Riley too, like another guy that just straight up needs an HC job at P5 real quick. Like throw that man the bag ASAP. Do not let him get to the NFL. Don't let Alex Golesh get to the NFL. Keep these bright young offensive minds in the college football game. That's what we need.
Absolutely. We have to cherish these moments, because the college football season's already kind of winding down. We're in week 11, man. It's crazy. The double ones. So it's already coming down to the wire. It's coming down to the wire. It's super exciting. We're so excited to have you join us. Sam, where can people find you?
Theathletic.com. Go to our college football page, and of course on Twitter at SCHANJR, SKHANJR. I post all my stuff there. So appreciate you guys having me.
It was an awesome show. Ton of fun. Well, thank you everybody so much for tuning in. Make sure to like, subscribe, comment, follow Sam, follow us, do all that fun stuff. Make sure to tune in on our Twitter. We'll be live tweeting all the games possible. We'll have tons of content for you. So thank you everybody so much for tuning in, and we'll see you next week.